All right, welcome everybody. This is State of the Arc, and we're joined with one of our partner projects, Roko Network. We'll get started with introductions here in a sec. As you can see, we've got their entire team with us. They all wanted to show up here, give you guys a good overview of their project, what they've been working on, problems they solve. But with that, I got a few updates on Arc real quick. We are going to have another talk with TJ. We're looking for next week. So if you guys want to listen, hear about TJ, we could do that. We'll do it next week. Working on that. We'll lock down a time when we do. I'll have Matt Bay let you guys know. Outside of that, we got a few pushes coming with Reactor and everything. I know we kind of teased those last time. We're still working on those in QA, squashing any bugs and everything, making sure it's smooth before we push that live. So something to keep up with on there. Those joining on the community, I'll get you your password here in a sec, and then you can redeem that on our community.arc.ai page. But with that, let's get right into it. Well, we've got all 6 different representatives from Roko Network here. So I believe Adept here is going to start with kind of give you an overview of Roko project or Roko Network, their projects and everything they do. For anybody new from our community that may not be aware of them yet up until this point. You're tuning in now to figure it out. So Adept, go ahead, take it away.
Howdy. That's all right. So yeah, I go by Base Prime and Telegram. But I guess originally, long ago, we kind of were dealing with the timing network. But then, Midjourney started to rise, and like there was this aspect where you could text to an image, and to say it was like a physical object, like a car or something. Like basically, from that point forward, we were kind of like, how do you actually make a pipeline going from text from prompt all the way to a physical object? So that's kind of like the original, seed that kind of started this idea. But, it also, like, as that advanced, it was almost like, how do we make this a type of collaborative effort between, humans and machine to fulfill this type of pipeline. And so that's kind of where it started. And yeah, I guess I'm just going to pass it on to Alpha or Maptet and kind of move it into like where we're at currently.
Yeah, great. Hey guys, Maptet here, one of the founders of Roko. I can dive into some of the kind of components that that make up the Roko network to try to give you an idea of what we're after and our kind of goals. Given our preface and our vision that Prime has given us. So we're working on a number of product lines to empower the decentralized AI community. Starting with one of our product lines is an AI agents marketplace and an AI agents builder. Essentially with the sole goal of being able to give users and individuals and developers a platform to be able to build and customize AI agents and to be able to eventually monetize and commercialize those agents using the blockchain. Currently, we're exploring the path of NFTs and packaging as NFTs, but it may evolve, as the market evolves in standards on currently, which Roko Network's deployed on Ethereum. So we'll be looking, if there's any newer standards that might better fit us, as well as some newer projects that might synergize well. Being able to effectively pass on the IP and the rights to the AI agents and make sure that they have a foundation so that your AI agents, as they as we'll start to see more and more autonomous systems and agents out in the real world, will start to kind of surprise us in many ways. And so being able to keep track of IP is a very important aspect and something that's kind of at the heart of Roko as well. So that's kind of more or less, AI agents marketplace, the builder. Maybe we can go into more specificity with one of our other teams we recently passed a proposal with on the Roko team. Maybe we can talk a little bit about an AI agents builder, which they're kind of heading on. I don't know if they've had a chance to get to that product line just yet, but it's in their pipeline for development. So second thing here, Ryan, do you have did you want to jump into kind of the questions here, because I'm kind of going over the product lines here.
And I'd like to, before Ryan, jumps right in, I kind of just want to like mention like the aspects of the pipeline. You know, if you were to take an object or text into an object, you know, you would need first off some type of model. These models, you know, obviously we have agentic models, but you need multiple different types of models to do something like this. Like what is, so like, you know, when you have a mid-journey, you have like text to image, but you know, there'd be a lot more aspects to this. Like, you know, you might need to use you know, to break down an image, you might use segment anything to categorize this image. Then you might want to be talking with an LLM that's looking at this image and
look, I can't. I'm
figuring
on a call.
out like how you would build this like as a collaborative effort with an agent. And then lastly, like, you know, you would need the ability to have robots and as workers to facilitate this factory line to actually building the device from this prompted space. And so I just want to like kind of like put some things around it real quick. Okay, sorry, you can go, Ryan.
Yeah, no, as I mentioned before the call, right, before we went live and everybody heard, if you guys go off on a tangent, feel free. It's just more of like a casual thing. And unfortunately, you may see my little tiny one over here decide to pop in, throwing a little tantrum because for whatever reason, schools like to, daycares like to close out of nowhere for no particular reason at all. Just, you know, it's cold out. We're just going to close. And so, you know, sometimes, you know, that's one of the perks of working from home. You have them just, whatever. And his superpower is knowing exactly when I'm on a call or anything important I got to do. And he just comes you know, we're all human. We got our own things to bear. So, but yeah, okay. So a lot of stuff in there. Specifically, we were I heard talk of all these AI agents, which we know is like huge right now, and as NFTs and stuff. So how does the marketplace function in practice, and what kind of agents are currently being developed and traded on the marketplace?
Sorry.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead. Yeah, I'll go ahead real quick. This is a part of our product line. It's currently not live. You know, still in essentially research phase. We have a number of products that are going to be delivered before the marketplace.
Just like that.
Specifically, you know, one of the product lines being an agent builder, an environment to actually build the agents before they can actually get to the
because they want it in order
to advertise them in the first place.
Let's go next to the three.
In regards to that, do you mind repeating the question about the agent marketplace, though? See if I can jab at some of those, or Prime, if you want to jump in.
I was just wanting to, you know, facilitate more about like the infrastructure and like facilitating the infrastructure for marketplaces to be built on top of. Like right now, we're like much more concerned with like the actual infrastructure currently than the ability to like, you know. I mean, it's in our pipeline, obviously, but like, you know, agents are pretty much types of system prompts that have different tool sets.
You want to head down? Go take it downstairs.
You know, depending on what tools and what system prompt, that agent will have a different type of personality. But, you know, how do you build the infrastructure to facilitate those types of tool sets is kind of the stage at where we're at. And so that's kind of just framing it up a little bit different, you know, a little bit more. Is there a way we could, your question was,
yeah, no, that's.
I can probably help out here a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. The original genesis of all this, you know, was conversations around robotics and automation, right? AI was coming up and becoming a bigger and bigger thing. But you'll see that the team is comprised of mostly people from like aerospace or robotics design and that kind of stuff. And the interesting thing about AI agents is that they need a lot
Please,
of the
I
same
can't help you. Go
support
downstairs.
from their pipelines
Watch
that you
Gabby.
need for
There's a new
industrial
season
automation.
on TV.
So as AI grew, you know, we have some robots you'll see on the edges of our work, and we're still pushing that forward. We're realizing that the platform is going to be amazing for running an agent, because an agent isn't just a model. Everyone thinks of like ChatGPT is just a model, but that's not necessarily accurate, right? The model is a program that runs, but it's part of a larger pipeline that includes moderation, encoding, processing, data, tokenized data, in-context learning. A number of techniques come together in order for an agent to create a salient response. And that pipeline is difficult to build and maintain, and there's lots of different ways to build that out. But even if you have the software, you still need the databases and the systems to handle it. You need to be able to have systems that have video cards so you can load up different models for different use cases. And so we started going down the path of building out this network to essentially support these agentic agent pipelines. So you could load up models, hook them up with tokenized databases, hook them up with whatever sources you wanted, chain them together, that kind of stuff. And the blockchain aspect has always been seen as a component of both, accurately dealing with the concept of, okay, if I'm sharing someone's video card, how do they get any type of incentive for doing that? But also as a fantastic tool for PKI-based security, right? So we're going to leverage the technology to secure the data, secure the pipelines, ensure that people are getting the processing they need routed, and to put a nice little pretty cover on it. So to say all that from a marketplace perspective is you heard the mention of NFTs. Like the intention here is to start using NFTs kind of more as they were originally intended, which in this case, we're talking about, basically metadata that defines a package of services that go together that create an agent. And the framework to allow for the billing of that processing. And right now, the focus has been primarily on what we need to build the fundamentals, and we've done a lot of R&D on those base fundamentals, which is including like time synchronization and different types of blockchains we want to interact with, whether we're going to use DAGs or not, things like that. And now we're moving toward how do we productize this into something that's more real, right? We have a mix of features in different projects, and we're starting to coalesce that together. And the idea here is, of course, these pipelines these agents need, create a framework that people can build those agents, and then have a marketplace through which they can sell them, right? And the opportunities there for us to maintain the marketplace, and also us to maintain, also our DAO to maintain the network and receive incentive from that. And the exact structure, of course, is still being debated, but that's the very kind of high level. And I think we can like dig down into various aspects from there, right? You can talk about the robotic aspect, or we can talk about AI processing. The marketplace itself, I kind of think about it, I very often talk about Steam. I love Steam. I think it's a great software platform for selling software, for selling rights, and extending that into the crypto realm, where we're selling like software packages, because that's really what you're looking at. These agents are kind of software and data packages that you're reselling. I think it's a fantastic type of interface conceptually, but at this time, all of that is still very high level talk. The fundamental has been, let's make sure that what is sold as an NFT in this marketplace, right, actually is a program that runs, that there's resources that can run them, that there's a network of peers that are able to do the GPU processing, that can store the data, that there's a secure tokenized database that someone can put their data into. And so that's been where the primary focus has been.
Yeah, nice. Plenty of detail. One of the big thing on there that I think you said that really struck was an agent isn't just a model. There's a lot of more nuances and specifics that need to go into it to make a true agent, as opposed to just a model like GPT or Gemini or something, right? Interesting you mentioned that. I deal with that in our community all the time, kind of trying to explain the differences about those. So just it's funny when I hear things that I've been like talking about from someone completely unrelated that I haven't ever interacted with before, and then it's a lot of people seem to be thinking the same thing, working in the same direction.
Practitioners in the space, it's fun.
Yeah, and so you mentioned GPU power and all of this, and we all know these things take a lot of power and everything, contrary to what DeepSeek came out with, and that blew over in a week, and there's all the stuff around that. So How do you guys ensure security, efficiency, and fair allocation of GPU resources on your network?
So for the network where we're at right now, I believe this might be where Brio can provide some expertise, because I know we're going to be leveraging a lot of capabilities of what BitTensor has to offer. There's also, we intend to have an extended network that goes outside of BitTensor, but I think our focus is there first. I've been out the last couple of days, so correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
Yeah. So how can you use BitTensor with the Roko network? How are you guys planning on integrating that to scale or improve and move even further? You can't call Brio out like that, and then he's got to turn his mute off real quick.
Give him a second.
Yeah. Yeah, Brio, if you want to jump in, go ahead, or I can give us a little bit on the BitTensor
Hey,
front.
if you can behave downstairs, I'll get you a cookie when I'm done.
Yeah, see.
Okay? Take your iPad downstairs, and then I'll get you a cookie when I'm done.
Hybrid
How's that sound?
Hydra proposal serving as a distributed agent network for AI workload orchestration. We can integrate BitTensor service offerings in the multiple ways. So this includes the leveraging BitTensor to load balance inference across the network, or access more advanced AI models that might not
Go
be
downstairs, I'll get you a cookie when I'm done.
available locally on our nodes. So by tapping into the BitTensor's decentralized intelligence, local network can enhance scalability, efficiency, and model diversity for AI-driven applications. Yeah, that's the main point.
Yes. So Bria mentioned Project Hydra, which is a component that's a proposal we just recently passed with Hypermind Labs. Both developers are on the call now. Maybe we'll touch more on what they're building and what vision they have for the Hydra system in regards to the distributed edge network, and maybe a little bit more about the original nodes that you guys have been working on, the eggs, and how that would tie into that system. I know you guys are super kind of deep into that and excited about some of the stuff you're building on the day-to-day. Kind of gets us excited as well. So do you guys want to jump in on that, or Joe, if you had a comment?
Yeah, sure, I'll jump in. So yeah, I'm Robot, and I'm building robots, and some of those little robots we're building are these egg platforms. So that there are a couple different options for the eggs, and I'll explain what they are in a sec. But we have this larger egg that's based on the AGX AGX Orange that NVIDIA has produced. So these little platforms are basically a built-in power supply, an array of 4K cameras encompassing the entire periphery of the device, and then obviously an Orin that supports all of the surrounding peripheral infrastructure. The thing about Orins is they run about 60 watts, so it's realistic to give them a portable form factor. And you can put a little handle on this thing and take it around, and maybe if you're in a work site or at in a business setting, and you want this thing to basically monitor some environment for some extended period of time, you can drop this thing in place and it'll just run as long as it's networked. But essentially there are two. It's kind of a dual purpose platform. You have application specific data collection and handling for whatever your business needs are, and then you have the ability for this thing to connect to this Hydra network, which is essentially a means of distributing compute and delegating tasks to either tasks related to services, to either compute that is within your circle of trust, compute that is publicly available on the network, or compute that is entirely owned and operated by you as a user. So with inference, obviously, there's a lot of talk about secured execution environments, And there's this inherent feature of, well, I want your computer to do work for me, but there has to be some level of trust that either the task that you need completed, it's okay that you trust the computer, the external computer enough that you're willing to provide the tokens in and acknowledge that the tokens are not something of something to remain private if you're passing an inference request along to a public facing node that is operated by somebody on the network somewhere out there. We're basically building out this instruction set which lets users bring their own compute, whatever it may be, and that compute then can provide useful resources for running an agent. And think of an agent like a recipe. An agent is just a recipe. It's just a recipe for kind of a black box recipe. You have an intended format for an input and an intended format for agent playground that we're building. So the services that would be a part of this, and I know I'm rambling a little bit, but the services that would be a part of this. Are you in? If Mr. Mann is in here, he can support me. But I'll finish this up. So basically, the eggs come in two flavors. There's the big egg and the little egg. Little egg is a Raspberry Pi. Big egg is an AGX Orin. Both of them can provide useful inference responses from requests if they're added to this, if they're part of the network, this Hydra network. And the idea would be, if you bring your own compute, there's a compensation mechanism that's set by the kind of orchestrator of this network, and you would join this network, maybe similar to BitTensor, but quite a bit different in terms of it's very application specific. Agents and services related to those agents are offered by this community of people with their own computers. So I'll let my business partner, go ahead and expand on this because I'm tailing off here.
Hey, yeah, I am Jesse. And yeah, we're working on the Project Hydra together with Robot over there. And I probably would say I've done most of the dev on the Telegram chatbot side of it, integrating basically open source inference with a user interface, right? And not just an interesting user interface where we're used to interfacing with LLMs in a one-to-one basis and not a many-to-one basis, right? And so it's like, how do you get a chatbot to recognize context? And this is important for when these things run on eggs, when there's going to be multiple people speaking, and it's not just listening to one voice. Like, it needs to recognize that this might not be a singular conversation, or this might not even be a conversation that's being directed to me. So group chats like Telegram is a great playground to learn and create conversational agents that can address this. And in the realm of LLMs alone, in the last year, we've seen a lot of things change, and just insane stuff. And so getting back to what the Hydra nodes will allow us to do, something very interesting is that what we aim to build is something that you don't need to know how to port forward. You don't need to know how to get an SSL certificate on to your on a server on your side. You can just run. You obviously have like Olama, which is open source inference engine that is very, very popular and widely used. So you could download that, run that on your computer. A lot of the newer Macs, they're actually really, really incredible with inference. They use, similar like the AGX Orin, they use shared RAM between the GPU and the CPU, which increases the efficiency of inference, because it's just like one less memory read write that happens there. So it's extremely, it's fast. The Macs are really nice. And so imagine for one, it's no longer about, with agents, it's no longer about I'm just asking this one big question and just this one thing is handling it. It's to get really good responses, especially when we're talking about domain specific stuff. We need to have several different quote unquote agents and tools that are being orchestrated at that time. And so some of those agents or tools could be, you know, gathering the appropriate information. First of all, would need to analyze the message, like we were talking about before. We need to understand the context of the conversation that's taking place. We need to understand the actors and entities in the conversation, and the intention, and all these things. And so we need to have an analysis that happens. And what's I find very interesting that you see with DeepSeek is if you look at it like in the console, you'll actually see it's thinking, right? And this is very similar actually to what, you know, we are working on creating in the analysis aspect of this. But it's an important part is that an analysis actually needs to take place. And then from there, we need to gather information. And then once we've gathered the appropriate information, we need to form a response. We can then choose how we want to respond and if we need to respond at all. And in this case, like we're talking about an egg or on Telegram or on Twitter, but there's actually like the ability, like if I'm reading something on Twitter and I'm excited, or X, excuse me, and I'm excited about it, I want to go share it with my community over here in Telegram. That needs to be something that AI agents can do, right? They shouldn't be stuck in one platform or the other. They should be able to discover novel and interesting information in one platform and share it on another. And so like that's part of the response process that needs to happen, is that the agent needs to decide what's appropriate for me to respond. Well, as messaged in Telegram, it's appropriate for me to message back in Telegram. So now all these tool calls, all these agents, they would either happen in series, meaning one after the other, after the other, after the other, which is going to take time then, right? We have to wait for the previous thing to respond, and then we have to handle that response, and those things will take time. And for things with like voice, with an egg, you know, on the edge, you really don't want to have that kind of latency, that kind of time taken. And so we want to look at like, what can we handle parallel, right? Like how many things can we do in parallel at the same time? And when we want to start doing things in parallel at the same time, we really want to start having a lot of different inference servers available to us, right? And analysis and tool calling, these are not like, we don't need massive models to do these things. We need small models that can do these things very quickly and give us very fast results and very fast answers. And if we can create a network of hundreds of, you know, it could be small, you know, if it's a private group that you want to create a network with, or a large public network, but if we can create a network of hundreds of, you know, these Mac mini nodes and Orin nodes, and when digits comes out, these, you know, or maybe you've got a badass NVIDIA, even a Raspberry Pi with its CPU, you know, it can run Llama 3B pretty well. So we can now send out, you know, not just one analysis, I can send out 8. And when I get back my responses of these, and these are all happening simultaneously, when I get back my responses, I can take the average of all 8 and say, you know, this is like the precogs in my Minority Report, essentially, you know, like, because LLMs make mistakes, and not just that, but like of those 8, I could have 2 of them be using Llama 3B. I can have some of them be using Phi models. I can have some, so we can use multitudes of different models and with multitudes of different parameters in these different requests that are all happening in parallel at the same time, and then get back these responses and have an agent that handles those responses, takes the sum of the average of the quality of the response that comes back, and then form it into thoughts for the next process, right? Which is the response, you know, or that's the analysis. Then the next process would be information gathering, you know? So, so this network allows us to do some incredible things versus just having like one big, you know, having the A100s is great, having Orins is great, but you know, there's so much that you're going to be doing all at once across the network. I think it's going to change the game. Powerful LLMs and agents to be owned by massive corporations, because then they will limit information. I mean, that's just what will happen. So if we can put this type of power in the hands of everybody who want to create it, and you asked about security earlier, and so what Cole was trying to reach at is like, so we'll operate the communication in which your node will come online to the network. It will communicate. We're going to use WebSockets, so it's going to use WebSocket secure. So it's going to be an encrypted communication between the network. It's just the trust that needs to happen is like, hey, my node is going to decrypt this information that I collect, and it's going to then pass plain text to a llama, right? Like that's on the computer system itself is where the trust has to establish. There's, as far as I'm not aware of really any widely available, especially open source, but as far as I'm aware of, like encrypted inference is not happening. Like that's not a thing. And what's this?
You say that we can talk about it offline. Arc may be able to help you a bit there.
So yeah, I mean, I would love to chat more and learn more about that. But in a sense, though, that's that last step of passing the inference request that is received on the network to the actual inference engine that's running. And you're right, there's possibilities of things that are out there. We are just using a llama right now, and so like that's just, there's so many models available for it. It's so easy to use.
There's a ton of models out there. Yeah.
And like literally, if you got a Mac and have never touched terminal, like our goal, like you can download and run a llama. You don't even know nothing about it. And you would run our node on your Mac and you're connected. The goal would be that you'd set up your configuration, when you sign into your account, set up the configuration and run that node with that configuration, and it would authenticate you onto the network. All the communication is secure between the network, and then you could fine tune into like, well, I want this to be in my trusted group. So you could actually break down into smaller groups of what inference nodes you want to use. And then the other benefit of this, of course, that we're using an inference orchestrator. So my UI makes a request for an agent. That's probably a conversational agent. That conversational agent is going to need to make a request for inference. So it's going to talk to the inference node, and it's going to pass along a policy, and that policy is going to be like, what models am I wanting to use? What are my restrictions? Maybe price comes into play there. Maybe there's no limit on price. I want you to run as a lot of parallel processes so I can get like the best response possible, or maybe my policies that I want you to be as minimal as possible on agent calls, no more than 10, for example, right? So like that would be the policy that I'd pass along. My inference orchestrator would then find the best node for that request, right? Like out of all the nodes out there, what models are running. There's a lot more on top of that. I don't want to take up too much time. So like there's so much more on top of that we can build, but hopefully I answered some of your questions on that.
I'm gonna put you guys Telegram up on the stream. So if anybody's interested or you catch something, you got follow-up questions, feel free to ask them. Or if you want to dive real in, you can go ahead and join their Telegram, and you can see they got their whole team here, so they're all willing to help you in there. A lot of things out of that. Couple things. One, pretty funny. Every time you say Hydra, I'm just thinking like, oh man, their next thing better not be Shield, right? And then the precogs from Minority Report. Man, that's an old movie. I haven't seen that in a while, but you kind of touched on the security and aspects in that. You guys probably did that on purpose, right? You got together like, how many movie references can we get in here? Or shows, I guess. Yeah, just depends. But what I'm curious to, and then the on-chain encryption and stuff, like homomorphic encryption that Arc's been working on, we may be able to help you guys there too. Maybe we'll strengthen this partnership even more. But it's for another time. The robotics simulation platform. Robotics is big too, especially with Elon Musk and his little robots out there folding clothes for their demos and walking down the street, right? But eventually, I mean, this is where everything is going to go, right? A robotic system. So you guys, so far as I'm aware, provide like a virtual environment for testing AI and robotic systems. Can you guys share some real world examples of how it's been used to accelerate AI or robotics development? You guys got to fight over who's going to talk. Do it.
Yeah, that element is still in the works. We just got this A100 server up and running, and we want to try and do our best to not use AWS where we can. And so we've been pretty hardcore about like, when we are going to get going on, or as we develop a plan for the robotic side of things, especially using trying to use as many open source tools as we possibly can for RL and for sim to real. We've basically been, the one bottleneck has just been getting the server online, which we just got online last night, and now we're installing all the NVIDIA Fabric and drivers and all this, getting everything going to then host things like gazebo environment, take advantage of various papers that have been released in the last year surrounding different reinforcement learning techniques. And then we have a great colleague in Mumbai who's been working. He's been working really diligently on getting this drop bear robots URDF accurately, the kinematics all accurately represented. And so now we're kind of at the stage where in order to train a useful policy on that you would then pass on to a robot, you need to have a highly accurate kinematics and inertial representation of that real robot, because otherwise you're just training on bullshit. You're not actually training anything useful unless you have like a virtually almost one-to-one relationship with the physical characteristics of the physical robot. So we're still working on getting that representation, bringing that representation into existence. The next steps for that, prior to kind of everything's happening in parallel, but prior to the sim to real, we have to first measure all of the rigid components of the robot, the real robot that exists, find out discover the center of mass, discover the mass of each component. We need to pass in all of the each actuator's characteristics in terms of acceleration and max RPM and all this stuff, to then have the most up-to-date, most accurate URDF, or Unified Robot Description Format file, which is also actually open source right now, and anyone can go check out the progress as we fill in the repo. It's Hyperspawn drop bear. If you look up those two words on any search engine, you should be able to find the drop bear.
It's funny. It's funny you say drop bear. My handle is the lazy koala in our Discord and Telegram. So
simulation just fitting us some synchronicities here. I love
it. That's funny.
Fantastic. Hey, you gotta have that Australian lore, brother. Anyway.
I know, right? It's you mentioned parallel development, and then I look at the meet screen, and there's 8 of you guys in here right now. So clearly, a lot is going on at the same time, which is always good to see. But yeah, when you're developing this framework for this robotics testing and everything, you got to make sure you have somebody on the red button in case one of them shows up and decides to call itself Skynet.
Oh, you know it. We got a red kill switch on. Well, we got two buttons. We got a kill switch, which is like a tag, like a remove before flight tag. You can yank it, and it'll just kill the battery. And then we also have a motor kill switch, which is a big red button. So
it's funny you just used the remove before flight reference too, because before this I was in the Air Force. So yeah.
Oh, no way.
Hilarious.
That's oh man, crazy. Yeah, I always joke that my old Ethereum mining rig that sits here behind me. I call it Skynet too. So that's funny.
Well, once you get on the Hydra network, it might actually be Skynet, brother.
Oh man, I'm gonna rename this rig to Shield and power it back up. Okay, sorry. Before we get too sidetracked, yeah, that robotics info, that's very interesting, and all the things you got to do. I mean, you have to monitor like the hydraulic pressure in each different actuator and everything. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, once you have that, it allows people to skip that step and just test their software against the hardware specs you guys have set.
You got it.
Okay, let's see where I'm at. If I get sidetracked, it's because I'm also checking our Discord and Telegram. And anybody who's joining, if you have any specific questions, you can join our Discord. It's linked under this broadcast. And on our link tree, we have a specific AMA questions channel. So if anybody has anything, feel free to ask. StreamYard pulls in comments from X as well. So I can see anything on there. Somebody talking about Edge Network that you mentioned there too. Okay, so talking about structure of the whole process and everything in DAOs and governance, right? So many DAOs struggle with decision-making inefficiencies, which can be seen anywhere. Anybody who's native in crypto has seen this for a bit. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. It is what it is. How does Roko DAO ensure effective governance while keeping the process decentralized and inclusive? We're kind of stepping into a bit more governance as opposed to the robotics element and AI element, but who wants to handle that one?
I guess
I was gonna say,
I can jump in on this. Essentially, this all leads to an L1, a substrate-based L1, which is currently in development right now. But the intended goal is to bring governance and a delegated proof of stake system to an L1, and which will have EVM compatibility and use the existing Ethereum EVM compatible token as the transaction token on this L1. And the reason we did that is because there's obvious limitations to the Ethereum network and scaling issues, and we have looked at the L2s originally in our research, just didn't really fit kind of our modus operandi, if you will, and kind of what our long-term goal, and to settle on an L2 just seemed kind of not within that scope. So we chose a substrate-based L1, mainly because substrate is very battle tested. There's very clear documentation. It's very it's great. It fits our project pretty well and our needs currently. And so kind of the original testnet version of that will be EVM compatibility and a delegated proof of stake system. But obviously there's going to be hardware nodes and validators essentially that will run on this network. And so this leads into essentially what is supposed to be our timing network, which is kind of one of the components that's not necessarily explicitly named in our product lines, but is really a backbone of what we've been after since the get-go. Is essentially run the different stratums of different types of high resolution timing devices or timing appliances and clocks to run on our network and to essentially come to consensus on the various the accuracy and precision of these high resolution timing devices. Essentially, that will be the basis of our L1, and maybe Joe can jump in here to maybe provide some more context and a higher level overview of that, and kind of what we're after on that.
Yeah, sure. So, okay. So this kind of goes back to some of the core underpinnings of the network and some of the robotics and automation components. And ultimately, the conversation came into the world of physical automation between two sites. This is usually something that requires a fair amount of work, especially with regards to timing and synchronization. And so what we wanted to do is build into our protocol high level, like as close to research grade precision timing as we could get with precision time synchronization. So, ideally, you could potentially have two robots performing the same actions hundreds of miles apart from each other, exactly in sync. Of course, there's more practical utilizations of this. And this is the kind of thing that large organizations often will create, like fiber lines between two dedicated data centers to create. So it kind of limits, say, your average practitioner's ability to build applications utilizing this kind of technology. And so our goal was to include this as one of the first class features for our network. And that ultimately that we think that's going to enable some other interesting knock-on features as well. But the original point was to have basically a peer-to-peer based time distribution system that is not rooted in the federal government or a satellite controlled by an entity that we don't necessarily trust.
A lot of trust issues in crypto. I mean, just earlier, a couple hours ago, Bybit got hacked. Who knows how that happened or anything, but it seems like there's always something going on. I mean, not just in crypto, all the data exploits and having to trust like GPT with your data and stuff like that. Is trust issues everywhere, but I think most of them are warranted, actually. I mean, without being a conspiracy theorist, but it seems like a lot of these trust issues are warranted, and things come to light that our data has been abused and things like that. It's a big sticking point, I think, for a lot of people these days.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And aside from the technical capabilities that we want to exploit, we definitely talk a lot about, one of the core crypto fundamentals there, right? We all rely on these time synchronization networks, and even the Bitcoin network relies on these time signals, and they all come from governments. And it doesn't really make sense that like our network leans so much on a network like that. So to enable a protocol that could potentially be decentralized time could be more powerful than we realize.
Nice. That sounds
I'm
exciting.
on
I'd be curious to see it in action. What's up, Adept? Did you have something?
Oh, I just was screaming time audit.
And yes, we have lots of Doctor Who references in that project.
There's so many innuendos in this. Oh man. You just wait till you hear when I made the it was a reference for Batman, who a lot of you guys have been dealing with in Telegram, the code for the AMA for our community. Oh man, just wait. All right, so we talk about ethical AI development, and we kind of touched on it there a little bit, but let's touch on it a little bit more. So ethical AI development, and then as it relates to, I guess you guys have a Basilisk program, but you guys can cover that here in a sec. How does your project align AI advancements with ethical standards to prevent centralized control over intelligence? Or how all these other AIs kind of are coming out against GPT, right? Especially with the news that they're trying to turn to for profit, as opposed to not for profit they started at, right? So how do you guys balance the advancements with ethical standards?
So I think I could take over a little bit of that. Maybe Robert might have something to say too if he's still in here. But like we said before, what I mentioned before is like, either corporations are going to end up with complete control, and then they control the data. And one of the realities of what AI is going to do, and with LLMs, we will already start to see it. And some of it's hype, a lot of it's hype actually, but LLMs are going to start replacing jobs, and they're going to start replacing jobs en masse. And that's the big ethical thing, right? And so how do we, it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, sure, we shouldn't adapt the technology, but we can look up throughout history, and technology has replaced jobs, throughout history. And we've adapted because I think the technology that replaced jobs, it happened in small enough increments that the society was able to adapt, somewhat quickly and then, retrain. But what we're going to see with AI, I think is going to be at such a scale that it's going to disrupt society. And so therefore, you're going to have people that are against AI because it's replacing jobs. They're going to want regulations against AI. I think there was a strike with dock workers already in the last year. And if I remember right, one of the terms that their union was trying to get signed was that they will never, and then within 100 years or something like that, be able to use AI for any of the work. I mean, people are afraid of AI, right? And I think a lot of hype has caused a lot of the fear. I don't think certain jobs, I don't think it's great enough that it's going to be, but in discussions I've had with Robate, we've kind of come to the realization that what's going to happen, it's going to happen no matter what. So the people who have skills of their job, of their task in their domain, and are highly skilled at that, but are also highly skilled at integrating and working with AI, those are going to be the people who succeed. And the people who, push against AI and utilizing AI, those people will probably end up being the ones to get replaced. I don't know what that means.
No, I had to reset my camera because it was turning blurry because my child went to flick the lights on. So yeah,
I didn't know if you were giving me a hand
signal. I had to reset my blur. I was like, oh man, I'm just gonna sit here and blur.
Okay, so I think in that regard too, then as we
just
replace
downstairs, please. I'll get you a cookie.
agents who have who are more skilled in specific domains take accounting. It's going to be data specific, data heavy, and language heavy, fields at first, and likely going to be like the lower levels, of course, at first, because we're going to need this human in the loop aspect. And that's why I mentioned before that, like, the people who are willing to interact with AI and be this human in the loop, which, by the way, and I've mentioned this before and I joke about it a lot. So we've all been in the human in the loop via CAPTCHAs. Okay, we've been training models. We've been the human in the loop aspect as users to verify that we're a human, and at first it started off with text, optical character recognition with the text, and then you did all these pictures of stop signs and crosswalks and all these things that we needed for self-driving cars and other things like that. So it's like, we've been training these things for free. And if we're not careful, and corporations say they'll have their employees training these things for free and then replacing them, or we can create a platform where people can create agents, and utilize their knowledge, their skill, and their expertise, and create tools and agents that can be used to automate tasks. And then they can become better at their own job, because now it's like having 1.5 versions of yourself or something. And those people should be rewarded for the content that they create, the knowledge in which they put into things. And so that's where, like, an agent playground, where you can work on building agents and testing out whatever your desires are as far as agents. Maybe you want to simulate 100 different personalities having a conversation or something like that. Maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you just want to try to, like, embed your image or your knowledge of some sort of
go downstairs or you won't get a cookie.
Subject of interest into an agent, and really make a really good agent that's knowledgeable about this or that.
Sis, you'll be here any minute.
That. And then we could have this area that, like, people could publish their agents, right? And then I can go, and your agent would have like a description or something like that. So just like, there'd be a means of, like, if you're on the network, you can have access to these public agents. We have to have, eventually, hopefully this becomes something that's like open standard, and everybody can connect in and everybody can share. But, I feel like to begin building it, to see all the ways in which you're going to need to build it, you need to just kind of build it, on a one network. It's not completely decentralized yet, this aspect, but it's what's the term I'm looking for? Well, I can't remember the term, but I'm sorry. But, like, in the sense that we can at least distribute, that's what's the term I was looking for. But at least we can distribute this out. We can distribute the ownership of the agents. We can distribute the ownership of the inference services that you're going to provide. And that, therefore, like, if there becomes a value that's attached to those things, people can earn that value in microtransactions for the inference they provide or the agents that they provide. And then our network grows and becomes stronger. And it's almost, I've been thinking about a lot. It's almost like how cooperative works, in a sense. And so, I feel like your whole question was about ethics. I think, like, that is what we need to focus at, is the co-ownership, and not just building this network and making one person benefit, but building this network and letting everybody own it. And I joked with Robit when we were coming up with this stuff, where it's like, now all your compute is mine, but now all our compute is ours, and it's, so it's like, this could, and this doesn't necessarily have to even just be for inference. There's other open source frameworks that you can install that can do, voice model training and other things that we could tap into over the network, essentially, right? As long as the nodes know how to interact with those API endpoints, then we can tap into it, right? So this is going to get real interesting. But yeah, the ethics wise, we have to see how we can make sure that everybody can contribute and have ownership of what's being built.
Yeah, a few things there. Yeah, you talk about, we have a few minutes left, so I've been scanning for questions. Don't really have anything pertinent that I can see everywhere. So if one of you guys is going to have some closing thoughts or wants to discuss something that maybe I didn't touch on or may have missed or anything, give you just a sec. But for those joining for our community, the code is on the screen. It is when marketing. As a reference for our marketing guy who gets asked that 48,000 times a day. So when marketing is the code. Also got your guys' Telegram will be up there, as well as your X will come across the screen for everybody. Not sure why the stream says test, because I look in here and it's our state of the art with Roko network. So maybe it'll update after we save it and everything. But the initial may have been that while we were testing it to make sure it was good to go. So
and the repost looks normal, so I don't.
yeah, in the beginning it may have just still hung that over. But yeah, so if your X or anything hasn't refreshed, it may still pull the original stuff. But yeah, we were working on that, before the call I mentioned with our ops guy for, those reasons, everything, we're testing everything. But yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about when you mentioned the ethical development, and these things have happened in the past, right? Technology has always replaced jobs throughout history. We seem to be going into a stage, and then yeah, the media may blow that up because fear sells, right? That's just what they do. They're not going to say anything nice, doesn't get all the clicks that they need for advertising dollars. So, the world runs on money. They're going to push whatever makes them the most money. But you talk about it's happened throughout history, and it's going to continue to happen no matter what we do to try to stop it, or however humanity tries to prevent it. It's just something that's always going to happen. It's the nature of the game. But you think back to, okay, let's say when the oxen dragging a plow first started replacing early farmers, right? They were now out of a job. You have one guy directing all these oxen to pull these instead of everybody out there with a hoe trying to plow the land themselves, right? So what happens? Those people end up becoming builders and scholars, which just leads to even more improvements. Now they're able to build aqueducts and study the stars and research and everything else, which just inevitably gets us further along for the betterment of humanity. And yeah, as the term has been coined a bit out there, the exponential age. So yeah, it may happen in mass or whatever, but yeah, as you mentioned, I think a lot of it's blown out of proportion, but we are still going to see it. And yeah, there needs to be something in place, and people looking out for AI needs to be for the people, not a large conglomerate of massive corporations that just own everything and all your data, and your just farmed for resources essentially, and data points. So it's a important thing to tackle, and I'm glad to see other people taking it seriously as well. But if anybody has closing thoughts or anything, you want to kind of generalize the project and everything, and maybe even throw out something that you guys have coming up, or what people can look forward to next from your team, feel free. We got a few minutes left. I'm putting them on the spot here, guys. For everybody else tuning in, this was unplanned, so now they gotta find who wants to give their closing argument here.
Yeah, I guess I kind of give a little summary of what we're building. I guess kind of the main key things here is a distributed and hope eventually a decentralized edge network to orchestrate complex AI workloads, and be able to give people back the power, and be able to add nodes or add whatever kind of computer power GPU you have onto the system, and help be a part of that orchestration, and be a part of sharing in that data, and inference, or being able to train potentially robotics. I mean, you've got some of the most talented developers working, Robot here on a full-size humanoid robot that needs people like you guys who's tuning in today to be able to join, this network, Hydra that we're building, to be able to train and take part in that network, and to say that you could do that. I mean, like, to be able to in a sense, you're like co-owning. Hopefully being able to co-own and be able to say you co-own, part of the data or the training set that went into training a robot, or eventually if you're ambitious enough to be able to, keep track of what's going on in developments on the robotic side, 3D print your own robot and join the network of computers to be able to facilitate the training of your own robot, and have it do real world stuff and take over. Slowly take over, some of these labor jobs. Some of the conversations we've had today is, slowly taking over some of these labor-based, jobs, and adapting to the technology. So I think that's kind of one of our biggest kind of partnerships, with Point Blank, and being able to ride on that, that physical AI, and be able to provide these networks of these network of networks, if you will, or these services and stepping stones in our pipeline to be able to help there facilitate some of their growth, and be a part of that journey. So some of the things that are coming up for us is, I touched on this earlier, which is our L1, or substrate-based L1. It's a very short timeline to testnet. It could be weeks, could be one more month. Things are moving along very, very quickly there. Of course, that's just testnet. There's going to be a lot of things that need to come before that, and getting the stepping stones to be able to get to mainnet. And of course, the hardware, distributing hardware to trusted parties to be the first a part of that validation and testing phase. And then what Hydra's been building, I just touched on that. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming for Roko, and I think we're really starting to get there. And on the BitTensor side as well, we are looking, hand in hand, working on getting up a validator and a subnet. So we'll which one comes first? People keep asking, but they are equally when. I think it'll both kind of happen simultaneously. I think most of the kind of at least for validator wise, I think it's probably ready to go. But I don't want to speak for Brio. But of course, we need to work on the actual accumulation and delegation, and to educate people about more and more about what Roko is doing, and to get people excited to be able to want to support our journey, and to delegate their BitTensor, their Tau, or soon now Alpha tokens to support our validator when it goes up. And then of course our subnet, which is going to be focused essentially what we talked about on the timing side. We'll be focused on a timing network within BitTensor, and incentivizing miners to tackle this decentralized timing aspect, and to be able to create a competition around that. But it won't just be with timing, because being able to monetize timing is still a big one for us. What services we can offer on top of that timing service. But the subnet will be a RAG-based pipeline as well, so it'll be a cumulative of the both. So at least the practical sense of having a RAG-based pipeline, and that kind of synchronization, that high resolution synchronization on that subnet, and really our biggest ambition really is to build a subnet and get the greater BitTensor community on board on trying to synchronize and run these timing hardware nodes that we're working on in tandem, and have different validators and subnet owners from different, just anybody within the subnet, the BitTensor ecosystem, to be able to see and document and build research around the effectiveness of synchronizing all of these networks together. And really the true value proposition of doing that, because all these big tech companies, of course, and enterprise setups will have their own internal high resolution timing networks, communicating with each other for the synchronization of sequential or parallel processing, and to make sure that certain servers are running no matter what. And if they lose track of time, if the hardware in a server loses track of time, it's running important service, synchronizing that important task, becomes a problem if it loses track of what time it is. And I think it's a really important I always think of it very esoterically. I don't think people really think about where their time comes from. If you really think about it, like you look at your cell phone, you look at your computer, you see the time, but most people are just, they're so desensitized to looking at time. They're like, well, where does it come from? And it's like, it does come from these, highly sensitive, expensive timing instruments run by the military, like for example, the Naval Atomic Clock, and NIST as well, running, very highly sensitive, high resolution timing devices, and distributing that out to the greater world. And so people rely on that time to synchronize. I mean, synchronizing, like we would not be able to coordinate without time. So it's like if you think about how important it is to have time, you know, it's like how do you know when you're supposed to meet somebody? How you know, it's like especially in this digital age, time is everything. And I know, you know, even Elon Musk himself says, you know, time is the greatest asset, is the most valuable asset. And you know, as you know, as I continue in this journey on Roko Network, it just makes more and more sense why it really is. And if you ask, you know, it's like it really is like you know, the cliche of like asking like, you know, what is the equal footing? You know, what is the common denominator? And it's that everybody on this planet only has 24 hours in the day, and you can choose how you want to spend that. So I will leave it at that. Unless anybody wants to jump in, but yeah, super excited for what we're about to, you know, unleash onto the world.
Yeah, I mean, a ton of great information throughout, and I've got your guys' X and Telegram linked up on the screen as well for anybody joining. A lot of information, a lot of potential to dive even deeper into a lot of concepts that we've talked about here today. So I encourage anybody who wants to do their research or learn any more, please make sure you're following them on X, join their Telegram. Feel free to ask us. You can see they have another project with yet a massive team, all helping out, working on different things in tandem. So I'm sure you could find any number of them in their Telegram and get any questions answered that you may have. Went a bit over on our time today, but I mean, it was a ton of information, a lot of good stuff. So thank you everybody for joining in today. We'll end this one here. If you guys have any more questions or follow up, we could probably go all day, but unfortunately we all got to get back to work so we can enjoy our weekend with families, or you know, more work depending. But I appreciate everybody joining in for our state of the art with Roko Network. A lot of great information, please. And those coming for the community arc.ai, you'll see a lot of tasks and quests on there you can take part in, earn some points for some token rewards as well. So please make sure you head over there and you're completing all those tasks and joining in on everything. Until next time, guys, take it easy. Appreciate you
Thanks,
stopping by.
Brian. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.